We have learned a lot about immigration so far. We've talked about different push factors that can push people out of their home countries. Some of those push factors that we've discussed are things like lack of freedom of speech or religion, problems in the government, or lack of jobs. We've also talked about pull factors that pull immigrants to the United States. Some of those that we've talked about are the ability to own land, freedom of speech and religion, and better job opportunities. We learned that in the years 1880 to 1950, many European immigrants passed through Ellis Island in New York Harbor, while Asian immigrants passed through Angel Island on the west coast in San Francisco Bay. Today, immigrants that come to the United States do not pass through Ellis Island or Angel Island. There are many different ways that immigrants arrive in the United States today, including on plane, by boat, by car, or even sometimes on foot. Today we're going to talk a little bit about this piece of paper that we have a picture of. This is the Constitution. The Constitution is the law of the land. It lays out the framework for our government and our laws. As soon as immigrants arrive in America, they are protected by the Constitution, but they don't have a lot of the same rights as people born in the United States, such as the right to vote. Rights are freedoms or things that you can do, say, or believe that the government or other people can't and shouldn't take away from you. Today we are going to talk about how immigrants can become citizens of the United States in order to have those rights. First, though, we'll go over our vocabulary words. Rights. Rights are freedoms belonging to a person that the government cannot and should not take away. The Declaration of Independence says that people are born with certain basic rights, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Citizen. A citizen is a person who has rights given to them by a country's government and has responsibilities that go along with those rights. I am proud to have been born in America and to be a citizen of the United States. Naturalized citizen. A naturalized citizen is a person born in another country who earns the same rights as native citizens of their new country. After many years of living in the United States, Lizette, who was born in Argentina, made an oath to be loyal to the United States and became a naturalized citizen. I'm going to read a couple of scenarios, and we'll talk about whether the people in these scenarios are naturalized citizens or if they are native citizens. So a naturalized citizen, again, is someone who was born in another country but became a citizen of the United States. A native citizen is someone who was born in the United States. And of course, a citizen is a person who is a part of a country. So if Candace was born in the United States and has lived there for her entire life, she would be a native citizen. If Matteo was born in Italy, he moved to the United States as an adult, learned English, and after 6 years decided to take an oath to be loyal to the United States, he would become a naturalized citizen. If Juliet was born in Sweden, her family moved to the United States, lived here for many years, learned all about the history of the United States, took a test, and again made an oath to be loyal to the United States, Juliet would become a naturalized citizen. Charles, who was born in the United States, and when he turned 18, became old enough to vote, would be native citizen. We'll talk a little bit more about the difference between native citizens and natural citizens in our read aloud today. Principles. Principles are general beliefs or rules. Eating meat went against Becca's principles as a vegetarian. In this picture, we can see some fireworks. One day that we always see fireworks here in the US is the 4th of July. Why do Americans celebrate the 4th of July? What about the Declaration of Independence? Do you remember who wrote the Declaration of Independence? If you don't remember, listen carefully to find out. On the 4th of July in 1976, Americans held the biggest birthday party anyone could remember. That day was the 200th birthday of the United States of America. July 4th, 1976 was exactly 200 years after the leaders of the original 13 colonies agreed to support the Declaration of Independence and start a new nation. 200 years later, people attended concerts and parades, and many fireworks lit up the night sky all across the United States. But for one group of people, a group of immigrants, the day was going to be even more special. In the morning, this group of people woke up and got dressed in their best clothes. They left their homes and traveled to the top of a very special hill not far from Charlottesville, Virginia. It was at the top of this hill that Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence and the third president of the United States, had built his home 2 centuries earlier. Jefferson's home is called Monticello. That morning, in 1976, the President of the United States at that time, Gerald Ford, would be there to help each immigrant become a citizen of the United States. A citizen is someone who has rights given to them by a country's government and responsibilities that go along with those rights. A person whose parents are U.S. citizen is automatically a U.S. citizen, but someone who was born in another country can become a U.S. citizen too. A person who becomes a U.S. citizen after already being a citizen of another country is called a naturalized citizen. To become a naturalized citizen, a person might do certain things, such as live in the new country for a certain period of time, learn to speak the language spoken in that country, and learn about the laws and history of the new country. Often, naturalized citizens must take a test in their new language about the laws and history of their new country. To complete the process, there is a special ceremony where a group of immigrants gathers together to take an oath, swearing to be loyal to their new country. Naturalization ceremonies are held all over the country throughout the year. The one in Virginia in 1976 was special because President Gerald Ford was going to speak. Usually, the president does not speak at naturalization ceremonies, but because 1976 marked the 200th birthday of the United States, this ceremony, and other ceremonies like it on July 4th and 5th, was an exception. So an exception means that it was different from what normally happened. That day, husband and wife, Jalil and Layla, were ready to become American citizens. They had come to the United States from Central Africa 6 years earlier. They left because of the troubles in their home country and arrived in the United States with very little money. Once they arrived, they worked very hard to start a new life and make a living. Jalil delivered pizzas all over the town of Charlottesville. Layla found a job placing products on the shelves of a grocery store. Jalil told his wife, "This is America, Layla. If we work hard, we have the opportunity to have a good life." Now, 6 years after they immigrated, Jalil was the manager of the pizza restaurant, and he and Layla had a newborn daughter, Nia. On the 5th of July, the three of them drove toward Jefferson's Hill and Monticello for a naturalization ceremony. "There," Layla said, pointing at a highway sign. "Turn there." As Jalil made the turn, another car followed. In the other car were Enrique and Pilar and their 4 children. The Gomez family had come to the United States from northern Mexico, moving first to Texas, then later to Virginia. Pilar worked at a company that published books, and Enrique taught history at the nearby University of Virginia. The Gomez family had been in the United States for 12 years now. When they first immigrated to the United States, they had thought, "We are Mexican and will continue to enjoy our Mexican customs even though we live and work in America." But now, they also wanted to become U.S. citizens. Enrique remembered the family discussions that had led to this date. One night 3 years ago, while eating dinner with some friends, Enrique thought, "How can I make a life outside of Mexico and not be a citizen in the new country in which I am living?" Remember, a citizen is someone who has rights and responsibilities in the country. A U.S. citizen can live, work, and vote in the United States. How can I teach American history and not become a part of it? I want to vote for the leaders of this country and make my home here. A friend who was born in the United States encouraged them. "It's quite a process to become a U.S. citizen, but I know you can do it." "Yes, it is quite a process," Pilar said. "First of all, you have to be at least 18 years old. Then, you have to have lived in the United States for at least 5 years. You also have to promise to obey or follow the laws. You have to learn about U.S. history and show that you understand how the U.S. government works by taking a test." Their friend grinned. "Yes, it is helpful to understand how the government works, though it does sometimes seem very complicated." They all laughed. Enrique said, "We don't have to explain every little detail. We just have to know certain facts about U.S. history, some basic parts of the U.S. Constitution, and some facts about how the U.S. government works." Remember, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are the most important documents in the U.S. government. "What about your children?" asked another one of their friends. "If you and Pilar become citizens, do your children become citizens too?" Enrique answered, "Yes, if we become citizens of the United States, our children will be as well. In fact, that's one of the main reasons we want to become naturalized citizens. We want our children to grow up as United States citizens." So now, Enrique and Jalil, along with their families, gathered in front of Monticello and joined the crowd on the wide green lawn where a stage had been set up and a band was playing. President Ford and a few other speakers came out, and the president began to speak to the crowd. He began, "I am very proud to welcome all of you as fellow citizens of the United States of America. In 1884, France, as a birthday gift, presented the United States with a statue, the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. But you have given us a birthday present beyond price: yourselves, your faith, your loyalty, and your love. We thank you with full and friendly hearts." Pointing at Thomas Jefferson's house, President Ford continued, "Jefferson and his fellow leaders set out to construct a new kind of nation based on a new idea: men may be trusted. Jefferson said, to govern themselves, he and all other patriots who gave us our Declaration and our Constitution studied different kinds of government before they created the U.S. government. How well they built it is told by millions of people who came, and are still coming, from almost everywhere. These new Americans got pieces of the homes they left behind: a song, a story, a dance, a tool, a seed, a recipe, the name of a place, the rules of a game, a trick of the trade. These additions of traditions and cultures have made America unique among the nations, and Americans a new kind of people. So President Ford is saying that the U.S. Constitution and its protection from the government was and continues to be a pull factor that brings many immigrants to the United States. President Ford continued, "To be an American is to share in those principles which the Declaration proclaims and the Constitution protects." Looking at his audience, Ford said, "You came as strangers, and you leave here as citizens, equal in rights, equally protected by the law, with an equal share in the promise of the future." He meant that all citizens have the same opportunities for a good future. Jefferson wrote about the pursuit of happiness. Our Constitution does not promise that any of us will find happiness, but we are all free to try. When the president finished speaking, everyone cheered. Enrique and Pilar hugged one another, and then they hugged their children. Next to them in the crowd, Jalil and Layla were doing the same. Then Layla turned to hug Pilar, and Enrique turned to hug Jalil. "Congratulations," they said to one another. "Now we are American citizens." Do you guys think that President Ford would agree that E pluribus unum is a good motto for the United States? Tell whoever's helping you why you think so. In our read aloud, we heard that a stage had been set up and a band was playing. A band is a small group of musicians who play music together. We can see this definition in the first picture on the left. A band can also be a piece of some material that holds things together, like a rubber band or a hairband. We see this definition in the second picture on the right. All right, my friends, I have got some questions about what we read today. Today we talked about how to become a citizen of the United States. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a citizen of a country? Being a citizen of a country means that the government of that country gives you certain rights, and you have responsibilities for that country as well. If you were born in another country, to become a naturalized citizen of the United States, you have to be 18 years old. What else do you have to do to be a naturalized citizen? There's a lot to answer that question too. It's a hard process to become a citizen. You have to live in the United States for a specific amount of time. Do you remember how long you have to live in the US? 5 whole years. You also have to promise to obey the laws. There are certain things that you need to know about the Constitution and about US history. There's a test about those things that you must take. And you have to participate in a special ceremony where you promise to be loyal to to the United States. By telling Pilar and Enrique's story, the author helps us understand why immigrants sometimes want to become U.S. citizens. What reasons did Enrique and Pilar have for wanting to become naturalized citizens? There are lots of correct answers to that one, too. One thing that our read aloud said, one thing the narrator told us, was that they wanted to be able to vote for their leaders, and they wanted their kids to be able to be U.S. citizens as well. Why do you think Monticello is a fitting setting for a naturalization ceremony? Remember, Monticello is the home of Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence. Turn and tell whoever's helping you today, why do you think that's a good place for that ceremony to take place? When you are finished wrapping up that conversation, you might want to pause this video until you're ready. When you are finished, go ahead and open up the PDF attached to today's assignment, and I will tell you what we'll be doing today. All right, my friends, when you open up today's assignment, you should have a form that looks like this on the first page, but of course yours won't be filled out like mine is. On the next couple of pages, there is a letter for your parents so they know what we'll be learning about in the next couple of weeks. You don't need to do anything with those ones, they're just there for some extra information for you and your parents. Today we're going to work on filling out our letters. So remember, in our last lesson, we imagined that we were immigrants and we were moving or immigrating to the United States. The wrong year. I imagined that I was an immigrant from China. I filled out a planning draft for myself as well. So because I was from China, which is an Asian country, I would have entered the United States through San Francisco, through Angel Island. I decided that I would stay in San Francisco and I would live in Chinatown, where many other immigrants from China also lived. A common job for both Chinese and Irish immigrants was laying down track or building the track for the Transcontinental Railroad, or constructing that track. So I decided that that was going to be what my job was working on the Transcontinental Railroad. I put in some sites that I might see. I know there's lots of large mountains in California, but none of them are made entirely of gold, like the myth said. I know that San Francisco is a busy city. There's probably lots of people and lots of different shops, but out in the unsettled territory where the railroad track was being laid, there was lots of open space, large fields that would be more quiet. I know a lot of immigrants from China were disappointed that there was not as much gold as they thought there would be. And the work on the railroad was very hard, and railroad workers were not always treated very well. I imagined that I would be excited to learn English, and that I would feel happy to live in Chinatown, where people share my customs and culture. So remember, this was our plan. When we're writing, we take all of that information in our plan and put it into full sentences in our writing. I have a lot of information in my plan. So in our letter, we're going to do a lot more writing than we usually do with our writing assignments. In my letter, which I'll go through in just a minute so you can see, I tried to include every single detail that I wrote on my plan. You do not need to do that. If there are a couple of things a couple of feelings or sights that you can't fit into your writing, that's just fine. But I want you to include as much of your plan as you possibly can. One way to do that is to combine some of those thoughts. So for each of these lines, we don't need one single sentence for each one. We can combine them, a couple of ideas, into one sentence. That will help us fit everything in our letter. Let me go through my letter, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I got all of this information into a short letter. The very first thing that you'll need to do on your letter is tell me the date. Remember, you might have chosen in your plan to be an immigrant in modern times in the year 2000 or 2001, or you might have chosen to be an immigrant in the past like I did. Since I chose the time in the past, I just picked a day. It doesn't matter what day you pick. I picked June 12th, and I picked the year 1901. I know that's in the range of years that we had a lot of immigration to the United States. Next, we always date our letters, and we always write a salutation or greeting where we say who we are writing to. I decided that I am writing to my mom and dad. You might be writing to a brother, or a cousin, or a friend. The next section of our letter is the biggest and most important. This is our body. Our body tells us what we have in our plan. So everything in our plan is going to go in our body. Make sure you include your city and neighborhood and what you do for work. So I wouldn't forget those two things. I made sure I wrote them first. I said, "Dear Mom and Dad, I have finally settled in Chinatown here in San Francisco." So in my first sentence, I've told them where I live and in what neighborhood. So I'm going to do an imaginary check mark. I've got that information. Let's keep reading. I have found work laying down track for the Transcontinental Railroad. If I go back to my plan, I can do an imaginary check mark, or you could even do a physical check mark on your copy if you would like to show that you have included that information in your plan. The next thing that I'm going to talk about in my letter, in your letter, not in your plan. Sorry about that, my friends. The next thing that we're going to talk about is all of the sights that I'll see. So remember, my sights were the large mountains, the busy city, and the peaceful fields where the track for the railroad is being laid. I combined a couple of those things to make sure that I could fit all of those details in my letter. Let's read and see how I combined those. I said, "There is no gold mountain, but the mountains here are beautiful." So there I'm talking about my mountains. My next sentence says, "The city is busy and," not load, I wanted to say loud. "The city is busy and loud, but my work out in the fields is peaceful." So I combined these two thoughts into one sentence using the conjunction and. The city is busy, but the fields where I work are peaceful. That means that next I'm going to work on my feelings. I combined a couple of these as well to make sure I could fit all of them into my letter. Also remember, on these ones, I want you to try to make sure you do your city and your work very first, just like I did in my letter. But your sights and your feelings can go in any order. And they don't have to go in the order that you wrote them. So these ones went in the order that I wrote them, but I think these ones I mixed them up a little bit, and that's okay. You don't have to write them in the order that you wrote them on your plan. You can move them around a little if that helps you to fit them in and make more sense. So I said, it is hard work, but I am grateful to be able to provide for my family. I am also happy to live in a neighborhood where the people share my foods, language, and other customs. I am excited to learn English though. So I included all of those emotions. The work is hard. I'm excited to learn English. And I'm happy to live with people who share my customs and culture. The next step in our letter is our closing. Our closing is our farewell. I'm ending with your friend and my name. It's important that we have our name. This is a lot of writing, my friends. This is more writing than we usually do. Remember, it's okay if you can't fit every single little detail. You might have to trim a little bit. Often when we write, we talk about putting in lots of extra detail and writing more. But in this case, we might have to write a little bit less so that we can fit all of our ideas in, and that's okay. That's an important skill in writing too. It's important to be able to write with lots of detail and to write a lot, but it's also important to know what details are important and what details we can cut out. So we don't have a lot of space on our letter, so there might be some details here that we need to cut out. We don't have to cut out the whole thing, but if I wanted to cut out, if I didn't have room to talk about how there is no golden mountain, that's probably a detail I could cut out. I could have just said something about the beautiful mountains instead. But I left the no gold mountain because I had the room for it. This is going to be a little bit tricky because there is more writing than we're used to. Take your time. I don't want you to get frustrated. Take your time. It's okay if this one's a little bit more difficult for you. I want you to do the best you can, and I think you guys are going to do amazing. I know it's more than we usually do, but I am not worried about you even a little bit. I think you're going to do an amazing job. I believe in you, and I am excited to read these awesome letters that I'm sure you will write. If you have someone there who can help you, who is working with you, a parent or a sibling or a neighbor, have them help you take your ideas and turn them into sentences that make sense. That is totally okay on this assignment. You can use all the help you can get on this one. Don't worry about doing this one individually. Again, I'm very excited to read these letters. These ones you don't have to keep a copy of unless you would like one. But we do need them turned in, so make sure you turn them in when you're done. And we'll see you next time.